Welcome to Open Studio. It's another guided practice session. Today we're talking about the biggest mistake that beginners, and I'll even say that a lot of intermediate and even sometimes working musicians make. And that biggest mistake is to concentrate on the what you're playing instead of concentrating on the how you're playing. And there's really two parts to the how you're playing. There is your sound, which is not what we're going to be talking about today. But then there's your rhythm, which is what we're definitely going to be working on today. I'm always amazed at the sheer ignorance of rhythm in a lot of beginners' practice regimen. There's an obsession with things like scales and voicings. It's understandable. It's math. It's a Sudoku puzzle. It's something that can be figured out. Rhythm is something that needs to be physically done. It can't be thought about, can't grab concepts. I mean, there are concepts, obviously, but in order to execute, you have to dance it. You have to move your body to it. On the piano, away from the piano, it needs to be a big part of your life. We can almost live a musical life, which is one of our sayings around here at Open Studio, to live a rhythmic life, because it's that important. And you can know all the fancy theory of harmony and theory of scales and how to play outside and all that. But if your time sucks, it's going to suck. It's not going to sound very good and nobody's going to be moved by it. Or you can know very little about what you're doing with your scales and your voicings. And if you've got killing rhythm, it's going to be great. You're going to reach people. You're going to know how to talk to people. There are these great instrumental albums of James Brown and his band where James Brown is playing the organ. Now, James Brown, not an expert organ player. He's no Jimmy Smith. He is fundamentally funky, though, and it comes through on those albums, and they're incredible, right? You probably know more theory than James Brown, already, you know what I mean? But he sounds better than you, likely, because he's so funky, because he's got such an incredible rhythmic vocabulary. That's how important it is. It's maybe the most important thing for any musician who wants to play any part of any kind of popular Western music, especially Black American music. It's the foundation, right? And it's oftentimes, especially here on YouTube and other modern mediums, one of the more overlooked things. And people say it's hard to teach. And it is harder to teach than the math that is harmony or the math that is melody. But neither one of those things exist without rhythm. Rhythm can exist by itself, but melody can't exist without rhythm. Harmony can't exist without some kind of rhythmic duration. Now, of course, there is pitch in every rhythm, but you get what I'm saying. You can just have one pitch and have an interesting idea, which we'll talk about, but you can't just have one rhythm, no matter how great the harmony and melody is. So it's crucial. So that's what we're going to be working on today. That is the biggest mistake, is you're not probably practicing enough rhythm. You're not practicing rhythm enough. You're probably practicing not rhythm enough. You're not, wait, okay, I'm all turned around now. Title for our session today is Rhythmic Training, because we are going to be training your rhythm, and we're going to be doing it in a way that I'm stealing from my buddy Peter Martin from his last live on Wednesday. We're going to be doing little 5-minute increments on each of these exercises, and these are something that you can do pretty much every session, and should do pretty much every session. All of these things. What are these things that we're going to be talking about? First and foremost, you need to get your accuracy together, and I need to get my accuracy together. You know, that we all need to get our accuracy together. Being able to control your rhythm is important. That doesn't mean that you've got to be a metronome, that you've got to be an LA studio musician level. They can turn the click off for 2 minutes and you're still going to be with it. That'd be great, but that's not necessary. You just have to have some control of your accuracy. If you are playing with another musician, you've got to be able to get into some kind of groove with them, to lay in a pocket with them. And we can practice that with other musicians, of course, but we can also practice that with a metronome or by playing along with records. Those are the two best ways to do it. We're going to use a metronome today, but records are also a great way to practice your accuracy. Because again, records aren't metronomic, but you can still practice playing along with other people's pockets, which is crucial. It just is. It's maybe the most important thing. So we're going to talk about a couple of different ways that you can practice your accuracy training. Then we're going to do a very fancy term called Hemiola practice. Now, Hemiola just means playing a phrase over the bar line, playing a rhythmic phrase over the bar line. We're going to do that with a very simple pentatonic workout where we're going to play different hemiolas over the bar line. I think especially for a lot of Black American music, this is a crucial function of syncopation. This is syncopation, being able to line up different time signatures over things like 4/4 or over things like 3/4. This is how you get real interesting phrasing, rhythmic phrasing. We're going to talk about thinking like a drummer. I think every single great musician I know, whether they play the piano or the bass or the trumpet or the guitar, also play a little bit of drums. All of them, almost exclusively all of them, have played a little bit of drums. They own a drum kit, or they at least own a drum pad, or when they were a little kid, they played drums as well as piano. Almost all of them play some kind of drums. I played snare drum in my high school marching band because I love rhythm, and I got really into it for a while. And it was, I think, it's still serving me today. Those hours of rudiment practice still serve me as far as, again, my accuracy and my ability to phrase rhythmically. It's the way to physically embody rhythm. We're going to learn how we can practice even on our instrument as a drummer. And then we're going to talk about singing our solo. Singing our solo is something that you can do. You can start today. You can start right now. And you can do for the rest of your life. And I promise you, every time you sing your solo, whether you sing aloud or you're just singing as you're playing, which we'll get to, every time you do that, you will come up with something authentic, genuine, something heartfelt, right? We're going to talk about a couple of different ways. By the way, we've been working on all of these concepts over at Open Studio Pro. And I just want to remind you all that this session is brought to you by Open Studio. And we work on these things all the time over on Open Studio Pro. We're just about to revamp some of Open Studio Pro's flow. Actually, we're going to add this really incredible feature to it starting very, very soon. So if you've been thinking about joining Open Studio or Open Studio Pro, now would be your time to get in on that. And then also there is a PDF for this session of all the rhythmic etudes. That's yours for free. You can download that in the description, and I encourage you to do that, and you can follow along, although I will have these graphics on screen as we go, just so you know. And one last thing, of course, like and subscribe. Okay. That's it. That's my spiel. That's all we got. Let's get right to it here. So this is our first exercise for rhythmic accuracy. I find this to be a very basic exercise to do. This is very rudimentary. This is infinitely difficult because you can make this as hard or as easy as we want. So I'm using just the Pro Metronome app. This is one of the OG iOS metronome apps. There's nothing fancy about this one. I think this is the free version, and it's got a rhythm trainer on it, which means that I can set a tempo, 100 beats per minute, and I can set it for a bar on and a bar off, right? A bar on and a bar off. Let's go a little bit slower. Let's go maybe 80 beats per minute. This actually makes it a little more difficult. How's the volume of the click? Is that okay? Compared to my voice in the piano, can everybody hear the click? Let me know how it's going. So let's look at number one. This is going to be our first rhythm training for accuracy. So we're going to get the beat. We're going to keep it going. See if we can line up with a bar of the metronome on and a bar off. These are eighth notes. Play this with me. Number one. You got it. Keep it going. All you. If you're not at a piano, you can use your chest. Eighth notes. Or your lap. Keep going. try number 2. These are eighth note triplets. Check it out. Notice your tendencies here. Number 2. Again, if you don't have a piano, use your body. Go back to number 1, eighth notes. Number 2, here we go, 3. Keep going. Number 3. I was rushing those. Keep it going. Number 3. 16th. Now we're going to go 2 bars on, 2 bars off. 2 bars on, 2, 3. Number 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. I was rushing. Get in the groove. You got it. Number 1. Whoa. How is that? And if you don't have an instrument, use your body. Are you rushing? Are you dragging? Notice what you're doing. Don't forget to dance. All right, number 2. Dun, 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 dun. Keep it going. Number 2. You got it. How'd you do? Number 3. Just notice, are you ahead or are you behind when the click comes back in? Number 3. Okay, now we're going to do number 1, 2, and 3 as written. No repeats. So just as written, 1 bar each. Eighth notes. Triplets. 16ths. You got it. Eighth notes. Triplets. 16ths. Keep it rotating. Last time. How'd you do? How was that? Was that okay for you? Did you nail it? Did you fail it? Failing it is not bad. Failing it is good. So Bethany's asking a great question here. What do you pay attention to during this exercise? By the way, this is an exercise that's so easy to do. You can get any of these metronome apps and they have this feature, and it's so good for your general sense of time, especially going between eighth notes, 16th notes, and triplets in the middle there. What do you pay attention to during the exercise? The sound or the fingers or the musical feel? I'm paying attention to the musical feel. So I'm paying attention to getting into the pocket with the metronome as if it's another player, right? That I have to lock up with perfectly. And then I'm trying to find that pocket when the metronome is not on, right? So we're alternating between the metronome on and off, and I'm trying to keep the pocket going. And then if I'm rushing, say, or dragging, but if I'm rushing on like the triplets and it comes back in and I notice that I was ahead, I'm going to note that. And the next time it comes around to the triplets without the metronome, I'm going to try not to rush. I'm going to try to hold back and add a little more space. If you do this enough, you really get intuitive with not even having to think about it, but your time will get better on all of these durations, right? A lot of the time variances we have are with people saying things that we see here in the chat, which is like, for some reason, the triplets are strong and 16th notes are always rushed, maybe because we're taught that 16th notes are twice as fast. Stuff like that is totally common and understandable, and that's why we have to do a little bit of training so that when we're playing with a drummer that's got great time, if we go into a 16th note line, we're not going to like take off out and be out of the pocket, right? It's going to lay in really nice. And what happens, y'all, over time is you're able to develop a sense of control where you can actually start, if you want to be ahead, you can be ahead. And if you want to be behind, you can be behind as an artistic expression or just your general rhythmic feel. That's fine. There are players who are right on the beat or on top of the beat or behind the beat, but they have control over what they're doing and it's part of their personality. So that's something to think about there, is that you don't know what you don't know. So this is a great way to test where your weaknesses lie with durations. And you can do all kinds of durations, quarter note triplets to quarter note triplets into eighth note triplets, and you can do different groups. You can do this, like I said, not just on the piano. You can do this with your body just by tapping on your chest or your lap. You can do this on another instrument like a bass or a guitar, and it works really, really well. I think this is an incredible exercise for really developing a strong sense of time, which is super duper important. And then Mike is going to throw a philosophical wrench in the works. What is attention? Well, Mike, we only have an hour, so we're not going to go with that. All right, the next thing I want to talk about are the Hemiola practices, and we're going to do a bit of a timer on this practice, actually. We're going to do eighths in groups of three, and you might be looking at this etude that I have written here and saying, well, Adam, there's only 2 eighth note groupings, right? Incorrect. There are 3 eighth note groupings. It just so happens that one of them is an eighth note rest. So we do have a phrase in groups of 3, rest, 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 right? We have these 2 notes that are played in this 1 note that is rest, and you're going to see here, as you can visually see this before we even play it, that it's going to take the phrase across the bar line, meaning that it's going to be an uneven phrase in 4/4 time, which is what this exercise is in. This is how you develop a pretty keen sense of syncopation. This is how jazz musicians have developed incredible rhythmic phrasing that's really, really beautiful and unique and often imitated by many different types of art forms. This kind of syncopation is what really turns people on. So there's no getting around that. You need to address something like this in your rhythmic vocabulary if you are interested in expanding that version of what you're doing. I think 80 might be actually pretty good for this. So this is how this sounds. And then we're back at the top. Now, I have these big power fifths in our left hand because I didn't want to do I didn't want to do anything super complicated with the voicing. I didn't want to give you some big clusters that are hard to think about. Just fifths. And we're using just a pentatonic scale, a C minor pentatonic scale in our right hand, right? It's all just that C minor pentatonic scale. The important bit about this particular etude is playing that left hand, those left hand chords, those left hand whole notes. Because if you don't do that, you can turn this around into like 3/4, right? So keeping the whole note going makes you feel the hemiola. It makes you feel where one is. Now, this is something that is a bit of rhythmic language. It's almost like a melodic phrase. Da da adu 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 da 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 adu 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 da. I played this literally thousands of times in my life. This rhythmic phrase, almost as if it were like, it's that kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's that kind of language bit. Let's try it here. We're going to set our timer. We're going to do this and do everything for the rest of the session in 5 minutes. 5-minute intervals here. Ready? 1, 2, 3, and. Play with me. Again, just a C minor pentatonic scale in our right hand, fifths, in our left. When you hear someone say the phrase over the bar line, this is what that means. You might notice a slight swing in my 8th note. It's because I'm not dead inside. You got it. A couple more times at this tempo, we're going to take it up a little bit. Now, one thing that you might think about is that this can be thought about as dotted quarter notes almost. Da, because it's in groups of 3/8 note. That's the duration of a dotted quarter note. So da, 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 and then just add a little ba, 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 ba. That's the phrasing. Let's try it at 100. I do everything at 100. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. You got it. Let's do one more tempo here. Let's do 120. We started at 80, then we did 100. Let's do 120. 1, 2, 3. You got it. Last minute of this exercise. Last time. So even as we're doing this Hemiola workout, we're still using a metronome, right? We're using a metronome, and we're still, if we're rushing these Hemiolas, that's good to know. In fact, a lot of you might have been rushing that little eighth note rest, especially at the slower tempos. Totally natural, by the way. Understandable. It's how you respond to that information. I rush the rest in this 3-note phrase. I rush the third eighth note, which is a rest, so that when you do it again, you really try to become accurate at that. And then I want to just talk a little bit about the timer. So in any of your practice sessions, whether you're practicing here with us at Open Studio or just on your own, this is something we've learned from people like Fred Hirsch, who set a timer not for I have to practice this minimum amount, but this is my maximum amount of time I'm going to practice on this particular subject. It's an incredible psychological tool, and it's used by some of the best performers in the world. This is the max time I'm going to spend on this. 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever it is. And then you find that it becomes a lot easier to get to your instrument, knowing that there's going to be a limit and that you're going to have guardrails, and you're not just going to then go from here to just... Some of you are laughing right now. Or, you know, whatever it is, your tune that you just start jamming on after a while, that's not going to happen. You set a timer for 5 minutes, move on to the next thing, and you're going to get a lot more done. Speaking of getting more done, triplets in groups of 4. So again, you might look at this and say, well, these are all groups of 3 triplets, but there are 4 triplets. There's an 8th rest here. And this is going to turn into not an over-the-bar Hemiola, but a 4-beat Hemiola over the half note. There it is. Now, why do we do these triplets in groups of 4 and 8th notes in groups of 3? Well, it's because if you were to do just triplets in groups of 3, it becomes a little bit square. You're really playing to that quarter note. And when you do these odd numbers of beats for these rhythms, or even numbers for odd rhythms and odd numbers for even rhythms, so you got groups of 2, add in a 3rd rest there, then it takes you places that are not square, that are not just dock, 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 right? That takes you into these interesting places. So again, we have the same changes, fifths here in our left hand. Same thing with just a C minor pentatonic in our right. Let's take it down to 70 beats per minute. A little bit slower. This is going to be probably the hardest one of the day to feel. Let's not forget to add our countdown. This is the maximum amount of time that we want to spend on this exercise today. 1, 2, triple it, triple it. stop it here. We're going to take it up a little bit in tempo, but I just want to share Seth's comment here that Seth says accents are everything. So Seth, you're not wrong. And one thing you're going to notice with the way that I'm practicing this is it's going to be a geographic accent. So the note that's at the geographic top of the line, literally at the top note of whatever phrase. So the last phrase we did was a phrase coming down, ba-boom. And that top note was accented, da-boom, ba-ba. This phrase is a phrase going up. And notice that I'm not going, I'm doing this. It's just a natural way that melodies are often accented, especially in things like bebop. This is usually the case. Like that, dop, do, got, and it creates this meta rhythm. So I'm going to be accenting the top note geographically of the phrase. So there's that. Let's take it up in tempo. This is 90 beats per minute. Da, 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 da. 1, 2, da, 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 da. You got it. Oh yeah, the chacarera. Great call, Fabrizio. Just a couple more times here. You got it. Last time. So the whole point of this is what you were just feeling, how it feels like there's almost 2 time signatures happening at once. That is some modern syncopation right there. That is an incredible feat if you can improvise with that in mind. Let's try one more of these etudes. This is 16th notes in groups of 5. Let's set our timer, reset our timer to 5 minutes. We're going to take our metronome back down to 70. And this is going to be a little bit more challenging technically, but this is an incredible exercise, especially if you want to be able to play fast. Again, on the right hand, we're just using a C minor pentatonic scale. And we're doing these changes, C minor 7, F minor 7, E flat, and D flat major. And the whole notes are important because they're going to ground you to the beat 1, right? And they're going to really give you that over the bar feeling. If you just do these, if you do these long enough without any other reference, it just turns into its own time signature, or can, if you're not experienced, turn into its own time signature in your head. So keeping the quarter notes, the beat 1, is crucial. Let's try it. Da, 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 da. 1, 2. Da, 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 da. Still referencing the time with the metronome. Hard to talk on this one. Got it. Hey. Let's get stupid. 120. 1, 2, got it. Last time. Very nice. Ken Zeller says, can we try it in fives? You can, Ken, but again, that would put the phrases on the beat because there are 5-note phrases. So it would kind of remove the thing that makes it kind of cool, which is that it's kind of going over these beats. That was kind of dumb. I just wanted to see if I could do it. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's enough motivation. Okay. So this Hemiola practice, I can't tell you how many detentions I had in middle school and high school for drumming on desks in Hemiolas, where one hand would be in 4 and the other hand would be in dotted quarter notes. And seeing if I can land in 4-bar phrases, or if there's ever a song, I'm the worst. I'm the most annoying friend. If there's ever a song on the radio, and it's like, I make me feel like dancing. I want to dance tonight. I'm like, and then I'll put the backbeat behind it. You know what I mean? It's horrible, but it helps you to feel these dotted quarter note, dotted eighth note rhythms that we're working on here today that I think are so crucial. There's a couple other things that I want to hit on here. And before I do that, I just want to encourage you, if you haven't already, and you like this kind of work, we almost never work on rhythm here, but I want to do more of it. So if you like it, let me know and click the like button and let us know that this is a subject that you want to tackle more often. Again, it's so important. It's as or more important than any scalar voicing you'll ever learn. It truly is. And then just one more time that this is brought to you by Open Studio, this rhythmic training. Go to openstudiojazz.com for all your jazz lesson needs. And appreciate y'all being here. All right. So the next thing that I want to work on, the last thing I want to work on, two things I want to work on. We're just using our C minor pentatonic scale. We're going to use the same chord progression. We're going to keep our metronome. Maybe do it around 100. But actually, let's even we don't even need the pentatonic scale for this work. Let's just start here. So this last part is think like a drummer, or this last two parts are going to be think like a drummer and then sing, I should say. So thinking like a drummer is a lot easier. This is something that in Aaron Park's course here with us at Open Studio, which is a beautiful course, by the way, called Meditations on Jazz Piano. He talks about one of his teachers, Sophia Rosa, who would make them close the piano lid, like close the lid to the keys, and whatever their right hand was playing, they would drum with two hands rhythmically. And this would be on a classical piece or on your improvisation. So this is rhythmic practice that connects to our inner voice. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to add to this practice that are important for me. So you can use your lap. You can use a table. I'm going to use this table right in front of me here to drum. Right? And so what we're going to do is take a solo as a snare drummer without pitch. There's one pitch involved, hopefully just one pitch involved, possibly two if your lap is uneven. But there's usually just one pitch involved. And we can only use things like accents and different rhythmic durations. And you have to think like a drummer when you play your solo anyway, but we often don't think like a drummer. We're often thinking about what scale or what note or what lick are we going to play. But I find that taking this back and thinking about phrases like a drummer is important. Now, I'm going to add a couple things to this. I also want you to sing what you play. So sing your snare drum solo as you play it. So we're going to be at this tempo. We're going to be doing the same changes, but changes don't matter. So we're going to take a solo. Now notice not one time did I go just a string of eighth notes, right? Because it would be a boring ass snare drum solo, right? You're trying to create incredible rhythmic variations and themes in your snare drum solo, right? And so sing what you play and drum what you play. And if there are people around and you're embarrassed, sing louder. Sing with your full chest. Here we go. I'm going to play some changes. I want you to just take a little bit of a snare drum solo. 1, 2, 3. Sing what you play. Okay, for most of you, that's way more than enough time to say all of the rhythmic language you have. Because for most of you, you haven't done, especially if you're a beginner or intermediate, you probably haven't done enough work developing that rhythmic vocabulary. But watch what happens now. I want you to take what you just did to your right hand and your C minor pentatonic scale, these 5 notes. I want you to do exactly what you just did with both hands, either on your lap or on your table. And I want you to put it in your in your right hand so that you're still singing the rhythm you're playing. You don't even have to do pitch, just the rhythm, and you're thinking like a snare drummer. Just like that. I'm not really thinking about pitch just then. And this is where the pentatonic scale comes in really handy, because you can't hit a wrong note. They're all going to sound good. But we want to think rhythmically first. Create your rhythmic phrases first. It's just an exercise. It's just a way to start. Take what you just did on your snare drum to the C minor pentatonic scale. I'll take care of the changes. 1, 2, 3, and... Think like a snare drummer. Rhythm first. And that's it. Did you notice a difference between what you just did, where we practiced literally hitting something with our bodies, physically manipulating a pitch with our bodies, and then taking that to the piano or whatever instrument you're playing, thinking less about like, and more about like, da, odoko, gudu, like you can play fast, but like thinking about where the accents are, where your big meta beat is, it makes all the difference. Someone has a really nice comment here. How would it feel to have so much music in you that you could sit down to YouTube Live and produce beautiful original? I really appreciate this, but what we're working on now, Bio Hill, is how you get to that state of where you can sit down and play beautiful flowing melodies, because I've been working on this for almost 40 years of collecting rhythms that give me goosebumps, and rhythms that light me up, and hearing a drummer play something that knocks me to the floor, and then working on that and annoying my friends and family and teachers by banging on things, and then taking that idea to the piano. And then there's many more things to it, of course. Y'all know I'm a big harmony nerd. And then there's things like touch and technique, which is also a part of the equation. But this is something that isn't, I think, practiced enough by beginners, because you could literally do a 5-note scale over, say, a blues, right? We always are playing a C blues. You can do that pentatonic scale or a blues scale or whatever you want to call it. And if you have super strong rhythm, it's going to work. Hey, by the way, too, you ever hear a 15-year-old kid that you're like, what the hell? Why do they sound so good? It's because their time is so good. It's because their rhythm is so good. It's because they have a direct connection to the music that's in them, and they let it out in a way that feels good. They probably don't know a ton of theory when they're 15 years old, but they're mimicking the great artist, and they can really make it feel like those artists rhythmically. It's an important part of the process. There you go. Making sure my neighbors can. Yeah, loud and proud. Wrong and strong. Wendy says, that worked nicely. It works every single time. There's another, just before we get in, we'll get into questions here in just a minute, or just discussion. But another cool thing about this whole thing, too, that you can do, you can turn this into a mindfulness exercise and a performance exercise where you're practicing getting out of your head. So basically, as you're taking your snare drum solo and you're singing it, right? If anything pops in your head, like, oh, that doesn't sound good, or is this goofy what I'm doing, or what, like, I'm not a very good, whatever. If anything comes in your head that's not rhythm or not an idea musically, don't play anything. practice not playing anything that's not actual from your musical soul, that's not part of you, right? So if it's like the judgmental mind coming in and saying like, that sucks, or this needs to be more of this, or you should be playing faster, or what would this person do? Any of that comes in, take your hand off the keyboard and don't do anything, right? So it's, and what happens here is, A, you don't play a bunch of bullshit that you don't really believe in, and B, you add a lot of nice little space to your solo as well. So this can be a great exercise of using the same thing. We're taking our snare drum solo, we're taking it to a very simple scale or something that we can practice on the keyboard. And any time that a voice in our head is thinking about, what do I want for lunch, or man, you suck, or whatever it is, whatever the critique in you is saying, you don't have to ignore it. Just don't play anything. Just be quiet. Let it happen. And then when you come up with an idea, play it. All right. Any questions? Jack, we go live all the time. We go live all the time here every Friday, 11 a.m. Nick says, I just started jazz chords for beginners and I'm brand new to piano. Congrats, Nick. Welcome in. Is there a good way to work on my coordination? I find it hard between the two hands. I play bass. So hands separate is the key for this, Nick. Just go hands separate at first as long as possible, and then slowly, and I mean slowly in tempo and slowly in how long you're working on hands separate, bring them together. It's really the only way to do it. Yeah, so Obisrael says, big problem is when you start improvising and not thinking about it. So it's okay not to think, but if you're thinking about other stuff and you're just running your hands, that's a problem. If you are just the vessel for the music that's in you and that's trying to come out, that is the flow state. That's the ideal. So we want to just let the music that's in our heart come out as directly as possible. When those other thoughts come in, those judgmental thoughts come in, or just bored thoughts, or whatever it is, what distracted thoughts come in, doesn't matter. You don't have to push them out, but also you don't have to play anything. You don't have to just run your fingers. You can just do nothing. And it's a better option. Bethany says, looks like I could be taking my hands off the keyboard for a very long time then. Bethany, it's something to think about. If that's what's going on, you can start training yourself to really just pay attention to the music that's trying to get out. Oh, nice. Thank you, Vladimir. Yeah, this replay will be up indefinitely. Icolol says, when you play the C major pentatonic scale, do you play it over C major or any chord in the C major scale, or does it work as a chord scale relationship? Yeah, C major pentatonic, you can play over C major. You can play it over A minor 7, F major 7. You can play it over D minor 7. You can play it over B flat major 7 sharp 11. And you can play it over G7 sus. So again, the easy way to do that is you start on C and go down in thirds. All of those you can play over C, under a C major scale. C major pentatonic, sorry. How can I take this through all 12 keys and be good to go? You jest, but you should. Are there any rules regarding, Jonas says, are there any rules regarding fingering those pentatonic scales, or you just do it as the hands want? Yeah, it really depends. You know, of course, there are good general principle rules about keeping your thumbs off black keys, but on that last one, you can actually practice blocking, Jonas, meaning practice your thumb positions, and your thumb can just move right up that pentatonic scale. So I got my thumb on C, my thumb on E flat, my thumb on F, my thumb on G, my thumb on B flat. Now, I don't know if this is great fingering, but it's super easy to play. That's the only way I was able to play it that fast. And it's great because then you're just like going bloop, bloop, bloop. You're literally just like that. This is untrue, Bethany. Everyone has some creativity in them. I think that's just needing to be found a little bit. Usually it can be buried under a lot of expectations, or judgment can be in there, but it's there. You got it. Just keep at it. You're here every week. I see you're here every week. There's some creativity in there for sure. Jack says, I missed a big part of this, so maybe you touched on this, but I find when my mind wanders, it's because I'm a nut. It's certainly possible, Jack. It's certainly possible. Kenny, so this is I'm using the Pro Metronome. It's an old school iOS metronome app called Pro Metronome. Literally like one of the first ones that was on the Apple App Store. I think it's also available for Android. And it's got the rhythm trainer feature where you can put it on for 1 bar and then off for 10 bars and really test yourself. Arnaldo says, as a non-pro jazz pianist, this situation happens to me very often. I'm still trapped in. I assume you're talking about the not playing anything when the judgmental thoughts come in. It's a way. It's not just like a technique to get out of your head. It's something that you can practice and can be in your practice. Just refuse to give that stuff any musical air. You know what I mean? I'm not going to play unless I'm thinking of something that I love, that is coming to me. It's practicing getting into the flow state, into getting into that zone where you are out of your head. You're not thinking, you're not trying, you're not grasping at things and wanting to sound good. You just are, and the things that are coming out sound beautiful because they're coming from you, and you are part of this beautiful universe and connecting with other beautiful parts of the universe, i.e., hopefully, the audience and musicians you're playing with. Seth says, is there a point to working this out on the left hand while the right hand chords the whole notes? Yes, you can totally flip this, and it's a great practice. Again, it's just getting your left hand up to speed practice. And someone like Jeffrey Kieser would say, this is how you get, if you want to know how to get a really great left hand, practice everything that you practice in your right hand with your left hand, and vice versa. Everything that you would put in your left hand, put in your right hand. People don't practice enough chords in their right hand. It's important. And people don't practice enough soloing and this kind of stuff in their left hand. Also important. Yeah, Jack says, oh nice, you got a video going up about this too, but the reason classical musicians end up playing insanely fast is because they turn many notes into one gesture. Yeah, the one gesture thing is a game changer. If you can just minimize the amount of, fingering acrobatics you're doing, you can just turn and burn, basically. Jazz musicians do the same thing. Can you make a video about touch and sound on the piano? I can try. I'm not an expert on teaching that, but I can think of some things that work for me anyway. Couldn't help but move my body along with all the Hemiola exercises. So damn groovy. Yeah, Sean. This is a dance. Rhythmic practice is dancing practice. So it's par for the course there. Ob Israel says, how to practice scale patterns and master it fast. And when I'm out of keyboard, melodic lines come to me fluently, but then I reach piano, I'm stacked. There's no easy answer to this, unfortunately. Nothing is mastered fast. Nothing is mastered fast. It all takes time. It all takes repetition, and experiencing it. Everything you want to master, you have to experience. I will say, over Israel, if you want to master something, do it every day. Make it a part of your daily life, not your daily practice, your daily life. Live a musical life. If you want to be good at something, even just a skill on the piano, do it every day. Do it, and no excuses. Do it for at least 5 minutes every day. But just do it every day. You'll get good at it. That's how humans work. Eduardo says, I noticed some jazz players establish a motif and then repeat it a few times and then establish the next one. Yeah, I think this is the easiest way, Eduardo, to sort of learn how to build a good solo with good architecture, is to take one phrase and I like to call it spin it out. Or like think about a child that picks up a toy and looks at it from every angle. And it's like that. So if I do, you know, so I just took the first phrase and I started moving it around, and then I started changing the duration of the rests in there, and then I just took a fragment of it, and then I started spinning that around, and then I started taking it outside. Like all of these things, like how many different ways can we use this phrase? It's kind of the thing. And you'll hear a lot of great players do similar things, or you'll hear a lot of great players who also do a new phrase every time, and people who mix and match that. But it's a skill that's definitely worth developing, of taking. Oftentimes I'll pull something that someone else is playing. Like if a drummer goes like, I'll take that. I heard the drummer do something. And I'll see where it goes. Now I have this. Now I have this. Now I have that. Now I have that. Like I just created a whole solo there based off the drummer going, and I did all these different things just by kind of like unraveling the thread of the rhythmic phrase more than anything. Great question. Any comments regarding triplets to sextuplets? Not really. I'm not sure really what the difference is. Is LSD required to be good at improv? JK. Well, no. Tommy says, is hemiola the same as rhythmic displacement? I'm not sure what your definition is, but probably, Tommy, we're talking about a similar thing. Hazel says, I can practice all of these and still suck at the bebop. No, probably not true. Just listen to and play along with more bebop, Hazel. Play the notes until you forget the notes. That's great. I want to become a jazz player. What books and how many hours a day do you recommend? I recommend Open Studio, of course. I think we're crushing it. Our whole team is committed to making people better. So go to openstudiojazz.com, and we practice several hours a day live, 6 days a week over there. And how many hours, it just depends, Skip. It really does. It depends on where you are in your life, how much time you have. I will say that just the way that you're sort of phrasing this means that you're thinking about a finish line and a goal, which is fine. It's fine to have a goal, but keep in mind that it's more about living a musical life, designing your life in a musical way, buying in, right? Going all in on being a musician. Those are the people that become musicians. So make it your life. That's the way to do it. Seth says, is it important to use these techniques so you don't sound like you're running up and down scales? Exactly right. Exactly right. Campusana, I'm sorry, I'm not able to pronounce your name. Campusanas. Beautiful name. On singing solos, do jazz musicians also sometimes sing solos in their head before playing them? So this is a great question. So I will ask you, Campusanas, do you come up with the whole sentence you're about to speak before you speak it. Like, do you play the whole sentence in your head? Probably not. Like, I don't even know how the sentence I'm saying here is going to end. It's a similar thing when improvising. And one of the reasons why I like to practice singing solos is because it's light speaking, where I have a concept that I'm trying to get across to you right now, which is my whole idea about singing solos and how it's an immediate process. And I don't think about the letters that are in the words. I don't think about the words themselves. I don't think about the syntax or the structure of the grammar. I don't think about the sentence I'm about to say. I don't think about the punctuation. I don't think about any of that as I'm doing it, because I've been speaking English for 45 years. So 44 years, because I'm 45. But you know what I mean? Like, I don't have to think about my concepts in English before I say them in English. And I don't have to think about my concepts in piano before I think about piano. It's more like I'm speaking to a friend, that I'm interacting, and it's coming out as language comes out, which is spontaneous most of the time. Now, you can, of course, pre-write a speech and recite it, but notice the difference in how when someone is reading a speech sounds versus how someone who's just speaking in casual conversation sounds. There's a whole different way of speaking. It's very similar to improvisation. Tommy says, I seem to get around practicing all these patterns and licks, but when I improvise, I forget most of them and play the same licks as always. Tommy, is super common, and it's something everybody struggles with not struggles with, it's just what happens, right? We have our vocabulary that we use all the time. If you want new vocabulary in your playing, you have to be kind of committed to recognizing what vocabulary really lights you up, not just what Adam says or what Peter Martin tells you to play, but what's the stuff that you've heard either us talk about or in music or in life that lights you up, and then collect it like you're collecting little gems that you're going to then, that's how you've got your vocabulary now. It could take some discernment, right? So like, do you even like, I think about this for my own playing. Do I even like all the vocabulary that I have? There's some stuff that I play that I've been playing since I was a kid that I'm like, yeah, I remember when I heard that and learned that. Is that serving me now to be like, no, like it's not how I play anymore. And sometimes it comes out and I'm like, well, there's that from when I was 15. You know what I mean? So there can be a process of discernment that happens. Oh, thank you, Seth. This is why we do it. Thank you very much. We really are truly trying to help folks as much as we can. Jason says, how do you think about using your left hand to comp while you're soloing? The honest truth is, Jason, again, with the language metaphor, I'm not thinking about it that much. It's just part of how I deliver a phrase, right? So I've practiced for decades, just it being a part of it. Sometimes I will incorporate the left hand as a secondary melody thing, so... But I still have to kind of work on that. I have to work that in, and it's becoming slowly over time more and more natural for me to do some two-handed melodic work. Just trying to hit all these comments. So Blue Train, when playing a phrase, should we hear the next phrase? I think I covered that with the language thing. It should be like language, where you're trying to convey a concept, but you're not predetermining the entire sentence, or you're not predetermining the entire musical phrase. Prince says, what's the best way to add chord vocabulary, please and thank you? I mean, listen to, the easy answer, Prince, is who's playing your favorite chords? What are the musicians that you listen to that you're like, I love those chords, right? Go figure those out. That's the best way to do it. You go do that. You do that in one song. Go figure out what the voicings they're playing. That will add more to your vocabulary than me giving you a PDF of anything. A lot of people love PDFs and love to whatever, but if you go right now and think about who is playing my favorite chords, go listen to what they're doing and figure it out for yourself, which is difficult, more difficult than someone giving you a book or something, but it's infinitely more valuable and useful. All right, y'all. That's it for me. Thank you. I'll be here next week, and I'm not sure what we're doing next week, but it should be equally as fun. I appreciate the work. Appreciate you spending the time with me. This video will be up in perpetuity, as they say. And join us on Monday for some more Open Studio Pro classes over on Open Studio Pro. No, sorry, Tuesday. Monday we are off for Labor Day. So join us Tuesday for some more Open Studio Pro classes, and I will see you then. Cheers, folks.